The following is a production of the University of Minnesota.
There we go. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Culture Core's Impact on Internationalization of the Campus with Tharoon Bornador with the International Student and Scholar Services. Just a reminder, this session is being video and audio taped, and we will be taking questions at the end. If you would prefer, I have note cards. If you would prefer to write your question, we will be repeating them for the benefit of the audio taping. And welcome, thanks.
All right, well, thank you everybody for coming. I am going to talk to you a little bit about a program that we have been running in the International Student and Scholar Services since, I think, 1998. I have been working with it since 2000. And we will be joining with two students a little bit later who will give some examples of what kind of work they have been doing. What this is and why we do it and what's the reason behind why we do what we do. The theoretical framework that we kind of basically go by, I have a feeling that most of you or many of you have heard of the Georgetown University Consortium project, a giant project involved in figuring out if study abroad has any impact at all. And they have figured that it does, but they know, for example, now that there has to be an intervention in that study abroad program, meaning there has to be some kind of an intentional structure or intentional learning that has to come out of that experience for that experience to be impactful or valuable to the student. So Culture Core program is in a way an intervention of that kind for our international students. So we think of it as an intervention for our international students right here on campus. Another sort of conceptual framework that is still really being developed is this whole idea behind global leadership. I really like Ausland's work. There's, of course, other people out there, but she and just a few people in her circle are the ones who are studying what do we do in order to create or develop people so they have these global competencies. And that's one of the things that international students have a great chance to develop while they're here at this university. You know, they come here and most of them are staying for 2 years if they're doing a master's degree, 3 or 4 years if they're here for an undergraduate degree, or even, of course, a lot longer if they're here for a PhD. And so they really have the chance to develop these competencies well if they choose to do that intentionally. And so Culture Core is part of that. And so Ausland and her fellows have talked about, you know, the ability to make sense of this foreign environment. That is one of the elements that somebody who is in a global leadership position, if they have that capacity, that is a very valuable capacity to have. Being able to collaborate cross-culturally. Our students, of course, are involved in all kinds of project and group work in their academic work. So they are always involved in these kinds of environments, and sort of discovering the transformational process of this type of work. Another one would be the student engagement. We know that students who are engaged in their academic life have a chance to, they of course become a lot happier people, but then also they have a chance to, in a way, learn better, and they are much more intentional about what they do. And that was these are sort of the reasons why we set up Culture Core in the beginning. Now, what is it? I would say it's a fairly simple idea. And I think the simplicity of it is what makes it work so well. Basically, it is a program that demonstrates the talents, ideas, creativity, and knowledge of international students to this university community. Or just sort of offering what else would be here if those students wouldn't be here. So often when my students come to me and they want to figure out what they could possibly offer, I ask them, well, what do you know? What do you have to offer? That's usually the first question that I have for them. So it's really, in a way, creating an experiences for the University of Minnesota communities that otherwise wouldn't be here if those students wouldn't be here. Who do we serve? We serve international students, we serve American students, and we serve the University of Minnesota community as a whole. We have not gone out to the larger, the Twin Cities community. And it's something that I've thought about quite a bit, and it would be nice to have a conversation about that. Yeah, sit here. It would be nice to have a conversation about that a little bit later. I don't have a lot of slides today because I really wanted this to be more of a conversation than me talking to you. And we have some ideas. We have this model. We have 12 years of experience doing this. I'd be happy to share all of that, but I think it's much more valuable if it's more of a conversation. So anyway, so these are the people that we serve, and the Twin Cities community has not really hit yet. And I think that may be somewhere where we might be going next. If you guys think that might be a smart idea, actually, I really don't know. There are some issues with it, but not many, but it's something that we might want to talk about later. The international students that we serve, the kinds of things that they actually get out of being in this program is that in a way it's a leadership development program. Our students talk about that they have learned organizational skills, they've learned time management, they have to juggle their project, their academic life, their studies and all that stuff. Quite a bit of time management skills that come into play. They of course learn presentation skills because many of them are doing some presentations. Goal orientation, problem solving, et cetera, et cetera. There's of course more. The learning outcomes that we have been able to sort of identify. Somebody did a PhD dissertation on this program, and so I have this rich data to work from. I'm not really reporting on the data per se, but she really said that the learning outcomes of this is that people are developing self-awareness, which we know is, for example, a very important element for a global leader to have. They develop a greater or huge understanding for what it means to be tolerant with ambiguity, resilience, accountability, the ability to locate relevant information, and things like that. I mean, they have to go out and find information that could be possibly of interest to American audience. And that is often the catch or the difficulties, is that you might be able to find all kinds of interesting information, but like who cares here? So they have to figure out a way to make it so that it actually is interesting to people from here. And then the cultural competency development, I think, is very evident in our program. People develop global leadership skill set. They learn to operate in this foreign environment. And I think it's very important to remember that the foreign environment is the USA or Minnesota for them. They're studying abroad here. And so the US or the University of Minnesota is a very foreign place for a lot of our students. They come from cultures that are very, very different from here. They come from educational systems that do not operate in any way how we operate here. And so a lot of that is just very new, very different, very exciting for a lot of people, of course, but there's a huge challenge with that. And this whole emphasis in the US higher education system that one should be engaged in your education, that you should be more involved in it, and that's actually important for your future career. It's an alien idea to a lot of our students. I think it's becoming less and less so as we get younger students to come in. I mean, sort of the millennium international students are quite a bit different from the students who were here 20 years ago. But still, it's something that needs to be emphasized with them. A lot of our students tell us that just learning how things are done around here, sort of the culture of higher education, has been a hugely useful part of this program. Because they sort of used to do things, but now that they have to make sure that this bureaucracy works for them, then they learn deeper about how that operates. And that's been quite helpful. The university community as a whole, in a way we have the opportunity to access the university community has access to ideas about cultures from around the world, and it's more of a first-hand experience, because you're really going to a presentation from somebody who is from that culture. we have had all kinds of things. I mean, we've been doing this for many, many years. So I just came up with a couple to give you an example here. We had a Japanese student here a couple of years ago. He was very involved in the Japanese language group here, and brought them all these Japanese comedies. I didn't really want to know how they got him, because he was here and these were comedies being shown on TV in Japan. So don't ask me about that. But they really liked it because it became an extra element of culture that they learned while they were studying Japanese. And as you know, humor is something that is so culturally specific. And so Japanese slapstick, it's not funny to a lot of people. And so they had to learn how that was funny. And they enjoyed it very much. We have people from Kenya. There was a woman who went to the Middlebrook, which is a place where they are really interested in creating an international house. And she did presentation on Kenyan cultures, and one of the things that she was emphasizing that night was textiles, and people really liked that. Somebody did a presentation on African headscarves and the communication that goes with it, because it's a lot of communication that goes with that headscarf. You know, how you have it on your head and how it's tilted and how it isn't tilted. You know, how you knot it and in what ways. It all means a lot of different things. We had a student go into Carlson School business class, a group of students that is going to China, and she came in and she was explaining to them how all business is decided at the dinner table, and so how you have to act at a dinner table. We have somebody who did a wonderful presentation on Nepalese NGOs. He's going to be here, talk to you a little bit later. And then, of course, we serve the American students with the fact that we have created a opportunity for students to just come and learn about something new. Example, Eddie. Eddie is an American student who is really interested is an undergraduate student, really interested in all things international, but doesn't quite know how to do that work. And so he has been working with me a little bit, helping me with marketing these programs and things like that. And so he is, in a way, learning to do more international marketing before he goes international. The kinds of projects, we have all kinds of projects, and sometimes I have a hard time coming up with the types. But sometimes it's like topic-specific events. People are creating some kind of a policy series or series of lectures around specific topics, as opposed to a country, so they go for regions or whatever. Like, for example, we had something on Asian technology boom. We had something that went on for a whole year on sustainable development around the world. We something on Latin American issues. Then we, of course, have, the basic, this is my country, this is my culture, this is what it looks like, this is, what I would like you to know about it. And then, we go to more specific things like, business etiquettes in China, or Italian business etiquettes or culture. We had something on Japanese pop culture, fashion culture, geek culture. Otaku means geek in Japanese, apparently. So we had somebody who was here who was an expert. I mean, he was one of those geeks in Japan, and so he came and he talked about it. And there's a group on campus here who was just absolutely delighted to have somebody of his stature come here and give a presentation, and he did like 6 or 7 of them, and they ate it up. Then we also do the more traditional stuff like tea ceremonies, ink painting, things like that. We do it all, and more. I mean, it's really the talent of the people who are in the pool every year. It depends on what they come up with. Some people have taught dance. These are the kinds of dances that have been taught here. And this is not necessarily all that sort of formal dance courses, where you have a mirror and you have a dance room or anything like that. It's more like the students will just simply find a spot, bring a boombox and, teach the dance. And for example, salsa dancing that just happened in Wiley Hall in front of, there was just a lot of space there. The guy decided to do it there, and 200 people show up. It was every Friday night for a whole year. 200 people will come, and there was nothing formal about it. There was nothing amazing, except it was amazing time. We've had, this woman, there was one woman from Ecuador. She did an MP3, an audio file, where she was teaching about, just basically talking about Latin American musicians, artists, and philosophers. And it was done in Spanish and English. And it was really, really nice. And it's on my website if you ever want to download it. It's 15 minutes each. Really nice stuff. And then many of our students, of course, go into the language classes and offer some kind of assistance there. I mean, it varies so much. I mean, sometimes they help with pronunciation, and sometimes they are sort of the cultural informants. So they come in and they talk about what young people are doing in those countries where those languages are spoken, for example. Before my presentation here today, I asked some of the people who have recently had an international student in their classroom, and Xiao Jie is the one who went to a Carlson School of Management session where she was introducing China. And so this is what the faculty member there said about her. She said it was very informative and engaging, and she did a great job helping my class prepare for their first trip to China. And this is a Carlson School of Management group that is going to China, I think, in May. Actually, I don't know when they're going, but it's sometime soon. Then Xiao Jie did another one for the St. Paul Career Center. And this is what the director of that organization said about Xiao Jie. She really had anticipated a session on just more of things about daily life in China. And she got so much more that they will be asking her to come back. And she'll probably do 2 more presentations. And they did not know that they would be asking her to do two presentations, or even 3. They thought it was sort of one-time deal. Tell us about life in China. And she said so much more that they were like, oh my God, we have to have you back. What she discussed went far beyond than giving insights to subtle cultural differences that she navigates every day as a Chinese student working and living in the U.S. She used effective and engaging imagery. She illuminated how communications patterns, social structures, and experiences of time and place differ across cultures in general. I'm sorry I'm reading this. I don't really like to read them when they're quotes because they're not my quotes. It's not me speaking, but because we're recording it, that's why I have to read it out loud. And as a result, I feel I'm equipped to work with much greater sensitivity and awareness, not only with Chinese students, but with students from other cultures. And so though we work with her every day and know her well, I didn't fully appreciate the effort she, as an international student, must expend to navigate those subtle cultural differences. It will certainly help us all to be more inclusive of her and other students across cultures in our daily work with her and them. And this was just one presentation, and it was just very impactful in that sense, and they're asking her to come back. When the Deborah Shapiro, she did her PhD thesis on this program, she did a lot of interviews with my students, and there were a couple of outcomes that I think would be worthwhile mentioning. They're also on my website if you want to see. One of the things that we have often heard is that students feel that by doing a program, some kind of a project here at the U of M, that it was actually quite a transformative experience for them. They all of a sudden felt that they actually belonged and they had something to offer to this campus, that they didn't just come to have information given to them, that they actually had something to give out. And so this is one. Culture Core was instrumental in my advancement and transformation from a small town boy from India to a global citizen. I learned how to visualize a problem, discuss possible solutions, and build consensus. I developed my confidence while working on Culture Core project, and now I manage a multinational project using my valuable skills. This is Bridge Deep from India. And I'm still in touch with him, you know. He always once in a while sends me email, and he came to visit me once too, and he said, Thorin, you know, I said to you, he came to town, and send me an email and say, Thorin, I'm in town, haven't seen you for years, but can I take you to lunch? I wanted to tell you some things. So I went to lunch with him, and he told me that even though he thought his education was quite valuable, that really doing the culture core projects were the ones that are the skill set that he uses in his work on a daily basis. And of course, for somebody who's trying to run a program, that's, warms your heart up, of course, and it's wonderful. But he really meant it, and he said that in my office, everybody's asking me, how can you manage 9 different projects at the same time? You're the only one who does it. How do you do it? And he said, I'm awfully sort of stunned even at the question. And then I realized that when I was in college, that's what I had to do. He was managing all his projects and his schooling and all that stuff. So that's how he learned to do it. And he said, I didn't realize that most people don't have that chance while they are in college to do that kind of stuff. And then a lot of people talk about having developed leadership. They really had to, they're leading a project. They're in charge of it. And they don't get a lot of help. There's not much time in the day for me to help people. So a lot of the ways I'm just kicking their butt and saying, just do it because I say so, or because you want to. And they usually do. I mean, people who come to me want to do some kind of project, they're all quite motivated to start with, I would say. So often I just have to say, go do it. So, I had to question people's opinions, and it was new for me to do this kind of thing. And that's what people say there's a lot. And people talk about having to become a self-starter in the US, because that is so required of you here, and doing a project made them even more of a self-starter than their academic life was making them. And I think the academic life was probably pushing them, and so it just sort of helped them actually get it in a way. And so, I learned to take a leadership of my creative idea and following it up to the end, because they are responsible for this stuff. Any kind of project management skills is definitely something that people mention a lot. People say they become more entrepreneurial. They feel like they have to become more creative and active in their everyday life. And this is all good for international students, because sometimes it's just so overwhelming to be in a new environment that it's something that pushes them to actually intentionally do it is very useful. So it stimulated me to think very much, and I enjoyed this change inside of me. So this is sort of a skill development, but also more of a transformation, perhaps. I learned a lot on how to work with people, how to organize events at this university, how to promote my messages, how to attract people to different events. And I also learned that it's very important to involve and motivate other people. We also now, we've been in business for so many years, so we actually have alumni. We have an alumni group, and we have people who have become faculty in foreign countries, in their home countries. And these are not their exact quotes. These are just sort of my memory of conversations with them over the years. Culture Core gave me a chance to be in the classroom, a chance I would not have in my graduate program. When you do a master's degree, you're not really in the classroom very much. So this was a chance for them to be in the classroom. Somebody talked about very much about having to learn to communicate what I'm thinking to my students. Sounds kind of, simple, but he hadn't really realized that, he was speaking in English to students who are from a different world than he is, and that he needed to adjust the way he did things so that it actually fit the American audience. A very effective skill for him to learn. And another person said, I became very creative. So I had to make my activities for students so they would learn the points that I was making. And the woman who did this last point, she is now a faculty member in the US, and she just received a teaching award for her teaching. And she said, Thorin, that is all because of Culture Core. Because the program she was in just didn't have a lot of teaching opportunities for her, and so the Culture Core project that she did were the ones that developed those skills. Mohammed Badie, he is the one who works in our office. He is the one who really created Culture Core, and he thinks that it's very important to just emphasize the fact that international students expose this university community to a different type of knowledge that we otherwise would overlook. Oh, do's and don'ts. I thought that was my last slide, sorry. I thought when I was just trying to think about this, as I have a conversation with you guys, I thought maybe I'll write some do's and don'ts in a sense. I think it's important to ask students about what they have to offer. not only asking them what we want them to offer. You know, so often we're asking them something that we know about their culture, and we ask them to present that. And then there is so much more to offer. And so I think that it's actually quite important, if you want to set up a program like this in your universities, to just ask them, what could it possibly be that you could tell us, or, you know, what else is there, or, you know, have it as a really open conversation. You know, if you ask students to do a cultural presentation, it's probably all right for some people. You know, it is kind of a superficial, in so many ways, presentation on your culture. And so you, as the person from that culture, know how superficial it is. So it's often quite uncomfortable to do. And so it's often a very good beginning. I know, for example, Rajdeep from India, that's what he did. He started out by doing a presentation on India, and then he moved from there. And he was involved in that sustainable development project that went on for a whole year. But it really started with a basic idea of him explaining who he was, where he was from, and that kind of stuff. So I don't want you to think that I'm saying you shouldn't do it at all, but I'm saying don't only ask for that. There's so much more. You know, maybe to sort of give an example of that is sort of, let's say if you just imagine you are somewhere, let's say you are in Kazakhstan, and they want you to do something on America. And so they ask you, so why don't you do a presentation on America? Tell us, what is America? And so what do you usually say when they say, tell us, do something about America? Usually what Minnesotans often say, at least I've noticed, they say they're not from America. You know, they sort of explain they're from the US. And so they sort of explain that that's not really America, but it's, you know, it's the word that the world has decided to use about this place. And then they're actually from Minnesota. So they're like, okay, we'll do can you do something on Minnesota? And then the only thing that they know about Minnesota is the Timberwolves. The only reason people, my friends and my family, know where I live is because of the Timberwolves. Before the Timberwolves, they did not know. I would have to say, think of Chicago and go north. They're like, oh yeah, okay, so you're there. But these are the images, these are the media images around the world. Minnesota is Timberwolves. And so they would say, okay, do something on Timberwolves, and don't you do some festivals? And what is here? You know, so you would have to do something on summer festivals in the Twin Cities, perhaps, State Fair. How would you explain that? But that is, in a way, what we're asking our students to do. And it's okay, but not only. That's basically what we're trying to do. Want to say. And some people are fine with it, and some people are not fine with it at all. They want to do more things, or they want to do something more professional, or something that is more professionally developing for them. Another thing that we hear a lot from our Chinese students, people here want to know about Tiananmen Square. What's the status of the issue of Tiananmen Square? The students who are here now, the undergraduate students, they were born that year. They don't know anything about it. Sometimes they ask their parents about it because everybody here is asking them about it, and they just cause problems for themselves and uncomfortable things for their parents. And so it's sort of like, I'm just sort of trying to imagine some kind of a comparison with things here would be like if international students are asking you, for example, about Japanese American internment camps. What do we really know about it? You know, so it's something similar that is sort of equally uncomfortable, embarrassing, something that happened in your country a long time ago that you now have to explain to people. So you don't really know much about it, so how do you even start? So one of the sociology students that I talked with, and she said that the way she basically explains this today is that China has moved on, and so should you. We can find out about Tiananmen Square in the internet. I mean, just Google it. There is massive information. Asking our undergraduate students who were born that year just doesn't go anywhere, and it puts up a little bit of a wall. You know, we're not Tiananmen Square only. Have you heard of all the other things about China? And so, and then there's always the exception. You will find somebody who will know a whole lot about Tiananmen Square and will be so willing to explain that. But, you know, don't just start there. And another things, sometimes we're asking our students to teach our dances, and it's really fun, But like my friend Eddie, the American students who are helping with the marketing of international programs, he really wanted Indian students to teach about Bollywood dances. And I said, you have to understand, Eddie, you're asking them to teach you the chicken dance. How exciting is that? Maybe for 10 minutes. And there's more to Bollywood dancing than one dance, So, just as something to keep in mind. So that would sort of conclude my fancy slides. And so, wanted just then to flip it over to the audience. I wanted to ask my two students to move over there and sit over there. We can have a conversation, or we can have them explain a few things, and then hope that's good. How's that? Any questions? Why don't you guys go sit there? It's over there on the table with the microphones. The whole thing is being recorded, so that's why we need the microphones. Yeah.
How do students become involved, and is it totally voluntary without compensation?
Yes, it's totally voluntary. The motivation factor that we use is money. We actually give them money to do this. Yes, yeah, but it's totally up to students to decide to come and talk to me. And so they come and they have a conversation with me. That's basically the process. And then they write an application, and we go in front of a committee, and the committee decides the award. Mm-hmm. There's somebody over there.
A few questions of how much.
How much money?
Receive?
Yeah. The fund that makes up the money that I have to give out is money that international students only pay, and they pay about $12 a semester. And so that's the fund, or that's the bucket of money that I have to pay out of. And when students does maybe one presentation, that maybe was $200. If they are doing, maybe 6 or 7 of those, then it would be quite a bit more. And if they're in charge of, a lecture series where you are maybe inviting speakers, you are raising money, you're writing grants, there's quite a bit more. And I think that the highest award that I've given out this year is $2,500. But in the past, we have actually given out some more. Mm-hmm.
I have a question about faculty role in sponsoring these. I'm a faculty advisor for a group, and I'd like to hear from you and also from the students, what are the ideal faculty support roles here for the student projects?
Yes. Do you guys want to talk about that, or should I start and you talk? Because
Well, yeah, I don't know. So maybe I can ask you for the first question too. I didn't join the Culture Corp or join the project because of the money, but I joined this project because I want to have some experience. And I just come because my friends invite me to come to join our project. So my project is Global Network Association of Minnesota. So we try to form a group and try to invite some international visiting scholar or visiting professor to come to make a presentation, to make a public presentation to student. So now, because these visiting scholars usually have only a chance to share their knowledge and experience just inside their department. So we want to give them a chance to make a presentation to the public, to the outside their department, and give a chance to other students or other professors from outside their department to come to hear their story or their experience. So I think the second question is sometimes the professor or the faculty
involvement. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I think we still need to help, need some support from the faculty from different departments to invite the visiting scholar to make a presentation to us. Because sometimes finding the visiting scholar is very, very hard for us to find someone that really want to come to make a presentation.
Right.
Yes.
I think one of the things that we have found that in terms of the faculty support, it's quite difficult to find good faculty support. Our faculty is very, very busy. Sometimes English is totally just disappears on me. So wave if I'm all of a sudden starting to speak a different language. Huh? Faculty are busy, and it's not easy to be involved in a project. But the faculty involvement that we've had, where the faculty is actually finding that the student is bringing very valuable things into the classroom, we've had that in the past. Then they get very involved and very, very helpful. So, for example, we had a Peruvian labor lawyer who was here doing a master's degree some years ago, and he was involved in the Spanish language service learning project that they did, classes. And his involvement was very influential in the classroom, and so that faculty member was very helpful in teaching him to become a good teacher. And so so his professional development was huge from that project. Another very helpful part is, when we're when they are, for example, looking for speakers, professors often know about people on campus that we might not necessarily know about that could possibly become speakers of topics, things like that.
Our question, since we're in Culture Core, let's do something like greetings. So let's just join our hands together and do namaste. Namaste. I'm from Nepal, and that's how you greet when you meet someone else. And Culture Core is, to a certain extent, this. Well, I told you about my culture. Now let me take some other culture and talk about Culture Core. In Japan, just bow a little bit. Let's stand up. Let's try it. This is Culture Core. Come on, let's do it.
It's Culture Core.
Let's bow a little bit. That's how you greet. And another expression, now we can sit down, is Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. I look forward to working with you, right? Yes. So these are things we learn about Culture Core. How do I start Culture Core? I was here undergrad, studying, running around. And as Jerry Maguire said, show me the money. So hence, I was sitting in a program, and Thorin came up to me and said, hey, would you like to share your culture, this, that? And I was like, yeah, this is very interesting. But back of my mind, I was like, I do not really have time. I have so much there. She goes, you'll get paid for it. I was like, aha, now you're talking.
For some students, this is important. Not everybody. Like Kevin said, he didn't. That was really not it. But
for us,
it's definitely a motivator.
We're juggling so many things. Education, this. And just paying for education is it's back of our mind. It's like a burning thing. It's like a dragon breathing down your throat or something. And it really helped. Talking about faculty, I've done a bunch of Culture Core projects because I keep on graduating, leaving, and coming back. One of the things I did was, I'm from Nepal, I'm a Hindu, and Hindu culture and rituals and everything is part of my life. And I just happen to have studied it too. There's a class on Hinduism at the university that I provided, and the Professor Zungere, became my mentor. And I was studying, I was doing the project, I was talking with my mom, I was talking with folks back home, I was taking my own experience, and I was going to her class and giving particular presentations when they had learned about it in the previous classes. And there I would go give a presentation, and it would be interactions. It's okay, so you have learned about these concepts, what actually it is in life, how do we practice it? And sometimes I didn't have answers, sometimes I did have answers. It was just sharing, and there was a creation of dialogue. And for me, it was the knowledge I gained, I was just sharing. And at the same time, I was learning about their religious aspects too. We'd compare, so you do this. So it was not a one-way traffic only, it was two-way for me. So hence I liked it a lot. And hence I have worked with a bunch of faculty in those aspects of particularly cultural attributes that way.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Tricia OKeefe, and I work with international students at university in Duluth. And we don't have any money, at least not yet. But I've always had this feeling that I get a lot of requests from faculty members and community members for international students to do presentations about various things about their culture. And I've always had this feeling yes, the students are extremely busy, they're working, they're studying, they have many things to deal with, and tried to figure out some way that there could be more of an exchange.
Yes.
So I teach an Introduction to College learning class with all international students, and I give them extra credit if they go, and because I get these requests from faculty and community members to have people come and talk. So I guess my question is two things. One, do you do anything in terms of students being able to get credit for doing some of the presentations that they do? And secondly, I'm not sure structurally, it sounds like you have a team, like a team leader that organizes a group from maybe a particular country that then does the project, and does everyone in the team get a stipend, or how does that kind of work?
I can explain that. It's usually one person, but sometimes there is a team, but in most cases it's actually one person, and then one person is in charge, and that's the person that gets the award. Not often do we have a team, but Kevin and Avigia, they created a team because they were setting up a lecture series. It takes quite a bit of work.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of both. Sometimes there are two people. Sometimes it's a student and their friend, and the friend is sort of not quite sure that they can pull this off, so they're helpers to their friend, and then the next semester the friend actually becomes a leader of something. Yeah. So yeah. And here. The credit, we have not been involved in giving credits. Yeah. But we also know a lot of international students are doing this anyway. They're not necessarily through Culture Corp, but they do this anyway.
Yes, it's good for the resume too.
Yes.
It's good for the resume.
Yeah, you could put this on your resume.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And from I can say that from our organization, the money isn't come from Culture Corp. It comes from student activity in the student organization or student union of the University of Minnesota. So we write a proposal. We propose what we have gonna do, and they usually provide a grant for us to do the presentation. Yes.
Yeah, so student activities, so we in a way partner with the Student Activities Office, who often pays for food and maybe speaker fees and things like that. But we pay, Culture Corp pays the international students for their work, in a way.
It comes in many forms. Like, for example, I talk about my culture in a community organization called Minnesota International Center. We go to classes, we just talk about it, and it's nothing like Culture Corp, but like it's just exchange of ideas.
Yeah.
Because sharing ideas is learning about it at the same time too. So there can be millions of other different incentives to do that. So.
Yeah, and then here, you have one more question. Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering, I work at the University of Minnesota Crookston, and I also, and I work with study abroad and international student programs. And I was wondering, do you have like from people from the community or people from the school that says, I want these kinds of things, and you keep a list of all of the different projects? Is that kind of how that works? And then, or do students come up to you and say, I would really like to speak? I
would say that 90% of what we have created so far has been student-driven. There are some people coming in and asking us, can you find us an Italian who can talk about Italian business culture, for example? We had a request, but we haven't quite figured out how to do that right. Because you see, international students are not allowed to work off campus, and so that gets complicated. And so, for example, there's a school in town that really needed some French language to help to teach the kids, K through 12 kids, French. We haven't quite solved that issue, like how to pay them without it being off campus and work related and that kind of stuff.
Right, and then they were saying that once you're in Culture Corps, that you stay in culture. I mean, are you just continuously looking for other projects, or continuous?
Yeah,
I mean,
some
is that
students,
kind of,
usually when they start, they don't want to stop.
So it's like a club or something?
No, they graduate so often that a club is so leaky. But Aviki is just an example of a student who came as an undergraduate, then he went to work somewhere, came back, did a master's degree, then left, and now he's doing a PhD degree here, so he's done it all here. So he's one of the few who actually keeps coming back to Culture Corps.
Yes,
because he's just been here for so long.
Yes, for example, just me, I don't know anything about Culture Corp, but my friend who worked for the Culture Corp just invited me to join the Culture Corp.
Yeah.
So it's going to be like a network for inviting or recruiting more students.
Yeah. So it's not really a club. I mean, there's nothing that in my office that people get together to do anything. It's just more students come to me, and then we'll create something together, and they go out and execute it in a way.
Yeah, it's nothing like a club. For me, the interest is it gives me a venue to get holistic education. Mm-hmm. For example, as an undergrad, I did not know how the university worked. Mm-hmm. As you call it, red tapes, there's so many. And as an international student, you have no idea.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And with my first Culture Corps project, I had to learn all these things, how to reserve a class, to a certain extent, how to survive in the university.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that was part of education for me.
Yes.
I paid fees and went to class, but on the side, while I'm trying to do something, I'm learning this whole administrative skills.
Yes.
I could work in an office with these things. Hence, there's this always learning aspect of it. Another example was I proposed a project on death rites, death funerals. In Nepal, there's many ways of doing it. And I wanted to do a particular one on sky burial, where you pretty much, it's high in the mountains, you cut the body and feed it to vultures. And I proposed the idea, and I said, I'll talk about it. And apparently, like, I talked to my friends, and it got out, and apparently in School of Public Health, there is a class on death rituals. And the professor got in touch with me and said, hey, could you talk with my class and my students? And there's a learning opportunity to collaborate. There's so many opportunities of learning itself in Culture Core. So it's more of an informal classroom, Culture Core. Hence, it's, like, I don't see it as a club, but more of an informal classroom.
Yeah, it's an extracurricular without it being very structural, maybe.
I think we have time for
one
one more
more
question.
Thank you. This is a question for the students. Having myself lived abroad for 12 years, I can empathize with your struggles to adapt to a new culture. But my question for you is, how has your own reflection on your own culture changed as you start to speak about it? Has it become more complex? Because I think we come with a certain package as young people, and then we grow and we realize just how complex our cultures are. So, if you care to comment.
So I'm not quite sure about the question, but for me, it's just when I work with the Culture Corp, I see the different things. I see how the student organization work. I see how to get the money support. I see how the university provide a grant to the student organization, and this grant give this money to other student group and just work like a real life work that we have to. I have been writing the grant, and I have been interviewed by the student, and this one is the news, and I never have this experience before, and I think it's very, very valuable for me. I think I'm gonna use this idea in my country too. Yes.
For me, like Doron talked about it, I'm going to be like 5 years or 6 years from now, going to be one of those guys who's going to come here and give a comment about Culture Core, because it's been very valuable. Coming to United States when you're in your late teens, you're at an age where you're very impressionable. What is this? And to a certain extent, because of Culture Core, I got to study my culture even more in depth. Like, I got to use the Ames Library out here, very valuable resource about South Asia. I got to interact to a certain extent, like, because we're at that stage where we're evolving so much. Like, we don't, like, for example, we don't ask why to your authority seniors. We don't do that. And, like, I was growing to become this. You'd say statements, and I go, why, how? You know, it's, for example, like eating food in classroom. You don't do that, but I was starting to do it because after my first year, because I was suffering more because I was a sophomore. But in the same thing, I was studying so much about my old culture I was able to create and store my identity. I knew who I was and where I came from. And at the same time, like a caterpillar, I was evolving to become a moth or a butterfly. I do not know what it was, but I was becoming something else. And yet, I knew from where I came, because Culture Core gave me an opportunity to study more about my heritage, my own culture. And the best part of it, I was sharing. And because I was sharing, I got to even go in depth. So, like, it was an amazing experience of maintaining my heritage identity, as well as being able to create something new that was with time that we all do. And at that time, and share it. So,
yeah. And I think that's a good way to end this little session, because now we're at 1:30. Thank you all for coming. I hope it was valuable.